Okay, so we're here on which page? On page 22a, Chav Beis Amud Aleph. So we're up to. I'm not sure if we finished off with the last sentence. Amar Rabbi Tanchu, Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Halacha ki yesh omrim. That was a disagreement that we have before of how much you're going to read from the second parsha, but I'm not going to go into this right now. We'll discuss it in a minute. But I think this was left over. I'm not sure if we finished with the last words. Rab Tanchum said in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Lakish, Halacha ki yashomrim. There was a disagreement over there. The halacha is like the yashom. We're talking about the laws of Kriyas HaTorah, and there are certain laws where you can start reading from. You know, the Torah has parshas. A parsha is basically a paragraph. So every paragraph you can see in the Torah, there's like spaces between paragraphs. That is a paragraph. A paragraph is made up of pesukim. So there are some paragraphs that have 2 psukim only. There's some paragraphs that have 30 psukim. Again, I don't know the exact, but there's various different sizes of the paragraphs. But still, those are paragraphs. And the beginning of the paragraph, it starts with verse 1, and then goes 2, and it goes 3. So we're talking about when you start reading from the Torah. So from which point of the paragraph do you have to start reading? Again, the paragraph is where that block starts in the Torah after there is a that block. So the opinion is that he says that you have to have at least 3 psukim. So you cannot start a parsha less than 3 psukim. So if you're going to read verse 1, 2, and 3, that's okay. But you cannot read verse 1 and 2 only. You have to have, you can't start a parsha without doing verse 1, 2, and 3. So basically, you have to, we're going to see why we're trying to figure out about the aliyah. Sometimes you have to go into the next parsha for an aliyah. So if you're going to start the parsha, you have to do at least 3 psukim. If you're going to do just 1 pasuk, no, that's not good enough. You need to do 1, 2, and 3. What's the reason for that? So we explained it before a little bit, because if you're going to say, for example, the person is going to read only 2 psukim from the parsha, right? Let's say he read 1 and 2 psukim. So what's going to happen is that, let's say somebody comes into the shul, and his assumption is that you start from the beginning of the parsha. If he's going to see that there's only 2 psukim, he's going to conclude that the person getting that aliyah only got 2 psukim for his aliyah, because he assumes that you started from the beginning of the parsha, that's the paragraph, and he only sees you did 2 psukim. And the halacha is that every aliyah has to get at least 3 psukim. So again, if you're not going to have 3 psukim in the beginning of the parsha, somebody walks in, he sees somebody is getting an aliyah, he sees you finish at the second pasuk in the parsha, he's going to assume that that person getting the aliyah started from the paragraph, started from the beginning of the parsha. And since you only read two psukim, he's going to assume that it's only two psukim needed sufficient to read from the parsha. So we say, no. At least you have three psukim. So if you're going to go into this parsha, you have the three psukim. Now we're talking about a situation that the person that got the aliyah, he got several psukim in the previous parsha, or one pasuk in the previous parsha. The truth of the matter is the other person did get three psukim. It's not like he didn't get three psukim. Then it would be another problem because he really has to get three psukim. We're talking about a situation that a person got an aliyah and he got three psukim for his aliyah. Aliyah has to be at least three psukim. He did get three psukim. But the way you wanted him to get the three psukim, let's say he got two psukim from the previous parsha and he has one pasuk in this parsha. We say, no, that's not good. If you're going to start in the parsha, you have to do at least three psukim. So if you got two psukim in the other parsha, you can't just do one pasuk over here or two psukim over here. You have to do three psukim in the other parsha. Because we worry if you're not going to do three psukim, you're only going to do two psukim, then a person walking in, when you start, he walked in the middle, and the person he sees, he gets only psukim in the parsha, he might conclude that there's only one, only two psukim for this aliyah, which would be a wrong conclusion. So this talks about when you start a parsha, you have to have at least three psukim. But the same thing the Gemara says is when you finish the aliyah, you have to leave at least three psukim. You can't leave less than three psukim. So if, let's say, the second one finishes, you can't leave only two psukim till the end of the parsha, because the guy leaving may conclude that the next person is going to get only two psukim, because the assumption is if the parsha ends over there, that's all what he's going to read. Let's look inside. Oh, Rabbi Tanchum, oh, Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Rabbi Tanchum Levi. And Rabbi Tanchum further said the name Rabbi Shua ben Levi. That's why we're bringing it down over here. So what does he say? Kishem she'ein maschilin. Just like we don't begin the parsha, pachus megimul pesukim. Just like you don't begin an aliyah with less than, if you're starting a new parsha, you must have at least three psukim. Like I said, because we're afraid that somebody who enters and he will see that he finishes by pasuk number 2, he's going to say, oh, he only read two psukim, which is wrong. That didn't really happen. Really, he was reading part of the other parsha. But since it's the beginning of the parsha, he's going to make a mistake. He's going to think that the person started from the beginning of the parsha. So just like you cannot start in a new parsha less than having three psukim read in that parsha, kach, likewise, ein mishayed in the parsha, pochus mishleishu psukim, we also don't leave over in the parsha when before the next aliyah less than three psukim, even though the next person is going to read these two psukim and go to the next parsha, perhaps, or maybe even reread. No, people are going to make a mistake. People are going to say that the next aliyah is only going to get two psukim. We don't want such a mistake to take place. Let's do the Rashi. Just like you're not going to start the parsha, you're not going to start the new parsha and not read anything less than 3 psukim. And the reason we did that is Gezeira Mishum Hanichnosim. We worry those who come into shul late. Sheyehu Svurim, they are going to think that the one who's getting this aliyah only had 2 psukim. Shalas cholas parsha zu, the 2 psukim of the beginning of the parsha. The assumption is probably the person is reading the beginning of the parsha. Since there's only 2 parsha, he came in late. He didn't hear that the person read psukim from the previous parsha. So we don't want to leave him with that. Sharei lo hoyo bebeis hakneses, and he wasn't in the shul. V'lo shamu, and they did not hear shekoru beparshal yoina that he read from the previous parsha on the top. So just like we don't start in the parsha less than 3 psukim, the same thing is we also don't leave over. When you finish your aliyah, don't leave less than 3 psukim. And the reason we don't want to leave less than 3 psukim is gezeira mishum hayotzim. That is the gezeira we worry because people that leave the shul, shesevurim, they are concluding, they think, shakoyre acharov shel zeh, that the one that would be reading after this one finished and he only left 2 psukim, lo yikra shnei psukim ha'anei sorim. They think that he's only going to read these 2 extra psukim that were left over because that's where the parsha finishes. So they're going to think so. So therefore, the Chachamim say, always begin the parsha with 3 psukim and always don't leave over more than 3 psukim in the parsha for the other person to read. Okay. So the Gemara asks, on Rabbi Tanachum, the Gemara asks Pshita. This seems to be obvious and not necessary for him to teach us this. In other words, what the Gemara's argument is that we need to worry more, or we find with regards to beginning a parsha, we find 2 opinions before in the Gemara. We found 2 opinions whether you can begin a parsha with 1 pasuk even, or you need to have 3 psukim. So to start a parsha, we have a disagreement. But to leave over a parsha, we don't have a disagreement. In other words, everybody agrees that you have to leave 3 psukim. Whether you have to start, whether you can leave 1, when you can have 1 pasuk in the beginning of the parsha, that's debatable. That's a machlokes. Basically, what the Gemara is saying, why does Rabbi Tanchum have to tell us that you must leave over 3 psukim at the end? That's obvious, because with regards to the beginning, we have a disagreement with regards to the beginning. And therefore, and with regards to the end, with regards to the beginning, there's no disagreement. With regards to the end, there is no disagreement. And so, the one who holds that you can't start, you need 3 psukim, for sure.
I was going to answer your question.
Yeah? Go ahead. Hello? Zog the Gemara Pshita. It's obvious. In other words, Rabbi Tanchum's statement, the name of Rabbi Shua ben Lakish, is obvious. It's not necessary to tell us that. Why? Pashto. Now, Uma Aschalto, since the beginning, The beginning means the start of the parsha. The Komakil Tanakama, the first Tanakama before quoted, he's lenient. He says one pasuk is enough. Machmeri Yesh Emrim, but the Yesh Emrim say, no, you need 3 psukim. So you see that there's a disagreement, even though there's somebody that says that is lenient, but yet the Yesh Emrim say, no, you need 3 psukim. So Shiyur the Machmir Tanakama. So when we're talking about leaving over at the end of the parsha, so the Tanakama is strict, and he also requires to leave over at least 3 psukim, and we'll see how do we see that. Like kol shekain the Machmir Yesh Emrim. So is it then not a foretory that the Yesh Omrim will say that you can't leave over? Because in the beginning, the Yesh Omrim have to be stringent over the Tanakama. So in a place where the Tanakama is stringent, for sure the Yesh Omrim is stringent. So why does Rabbi Tanuchim have to tell us that just like you don't start less than, same thing as you don't finish, of course you don't finish less than 3 psukim, because that's not even debatable. Everybody agrees that you don't. Whether you can start by 3 psukim or not, that's debatable. That's a machloikas between the Tanakama and the Yesh Omrim. But in the end, there is no disagreement. Let me tell you what is the proof for this. The Gemara brought down before, that's last week's Gemara, the Gemara brought down that there was reading in the Torah during the Maimonides. While the Kohanim sacrificed and the Levim sang, the Jewish people had the representation over there. Every day of the week, they would read from a different portion of the Torah. So it says on the first day, the Gemara says on Sunday, what did they read from the Torah? So they read from the beginning of Bereshis. Now, from the beginning of Bereshis, the first parsha, the first paragraph, only has 5 psukim. And the second parsha has 2 psukim. Let me just think for a second. I'm going to look at the Gemara here. No, that's not. I'm sorry, I quoted the wrong Gemara. I quoted the wrong Gemara. It's the Gemara from the Brisa that said Shel Chamisha Psukim B'Yochid. Over there, basically, it says. I will read this. So it says that a parsha that has 6 psukim, parsha shizon koyim meisu b'shnayim. So you have 2 people read it, 3 and 3, because that's enough aliyah for each one. What do you have of Chamisha Psukim? So he says you read it b'yachid, only one person reads it. Why do you read it b'yachid? Why one person? Why don't we say, okay, let him just read 3 psukim? He says that if you have a parsha of 5 psukim, one person reads it. So why does the Brisa say that one person reads it? It must be because if one person has no choice, because he can't read only 3 psukim, because then he'd be leaving over 2 psukim in the end. So you see that this Tana holds that you can't leave behind 2 psukim. So even though in the previous statement he does hold that you can start, he says like this: Korah Rishon Shloisha. If the first one reads 3, so it says the second one, the first aliyah, reads 3 psukim. The second one can read 2 of this parsha, which is of the 5, and 1 pasuk mi parsha acheres. So that means you have two from the first parsha and one from the following parsha. That means that he doesn't care, this Tanakama doesn't care about just reading one pasuk. The Yesh Emrim says no, shloisha. He says you need to read at least. So if you're going to read two from this parsha, plus three from the next parsha, because Eimaschil the parsha shloisha psukim. You can't start the new parsha less than three psukim. So this is what the Gemara is saying. Shi yurde machmir tanakamo, leaving over, which means reading only through three psukim and leaving two psukim afterwards. The Tanakama is more stringent. How do we know the Tanakama is stringent? The Toni, Shira Tanakana, as Rashi brings down, the Toni, because it says in the Braisa, B'shel Chamisha B'yochid, that you read, if you have a parsha that has 5 psukim, only one person reads it. The Loyam Rinon, we don't say Yikra Rishon Shloisha, let him read 3. The Yivsekim Yersa, let him interrupt if he wants, and let the next one read 2 and go into the next parsha if he wants. Why do we tell him to read all the 5? It's a siman that proves to us that he doesn't allow to leave over 2 psukim. That means that even the Tanakama that holds that it's okay to start a parsha just with one pasuk, he also holds that, but you can't leave less than 3 psukim in the parsha, because he says if you have only 5 psukim, only one person can read it. Is loikoshki the machmeri yashemim. So for sure, the other ones that say that you can't even leave over in the beginning of the parsha one pasuk, you need 3. For sure, in the end of the parsha, you have to have 3 psukim. So why does Rab Tanchum has to tell us that just like you don't start, you don't finish? Of course, finishing is more opinions go along with that than beginning. So that's obvious. And the Gemara says, actually, the Gemara says, it's not because of the opinion, it's because of the logic. Because of the logic that why did we say, there's a logic to say that we should mainly be concerned with the beginning. What are we afraid in the beginning? In the beginning, we're afraid that somebody who comes into the shul and he sees the guy's getting an aliyah and there's only 2 psukim, he's going to think that he's only getting 2 psukim. Who we're talking about? We're talking about people entering in the shul. People coming late to shul, unfortunately, it's a very common, we know it firsthand, it's a very common occurrence that people will come late to shul. So therefore, logically, we're concerned people coming in late. But maybe, people who argue people leaving shul early is also common, but maybe it's not as common as people coming in. So to worry about people leaving, maybe that's not such a common thing. So maybe we shouldn't worry about the end, to say that somebody might leave and he sees that there's only 2 psukim, he's going to think that the next one is only going to get 2 psukim. People don't leave so fast. So that's why he needed to say, no, we worry about those coming in and those goes out. Answer the Gemara. Ma'u de tema. I might have said, nichnosim shkichi. For people to enter in the middle of the Torah reading is common. Nichnosim shkichi, says Rashi, lefikoch ichmiru yesh emrim behassechola. And that's why yesh emrim, that's the opinion that says in the beginning, you can't just do one pasuk. If the previous one read 2 from the previous parsha, he'll have to read 3 in this parsha, not 1, because he worries somebody will come in and he'll think that he only read 1 pasuk or 2 psukim. But yotzim lo shkichi, maybe it's not so common people to leave. The manchi sefer Torah v'nafki, they love the sefer Torah and they'll leave. So therefore, maybe in the end it's not such a common occurrence that it's going to happen that people are going to leave and they're going to think, oh, the next guy is only going to get 2 psukim. So that's why Kamash Malon. That's why Rabbi Shub and Levi, Rabbi says, no. We worry about the people that come in, where the people go out, and you can't leave less than 3 psukim at the end. Okay. But now the actual question is, so what's the reasoning really for the Tanakama? And the Tanakama has an opposite logic, it would seem. Because in the beginning, he rules in that Braise that if you read 2 psukim in the previous parsha, it's sufficient to read 1. Because he's not worried about somebody's coming in. But yet he says you read Chamisha only 1, because you can't stop after 3 psukim, because you can't leave 2 psukim. Why does he say that you cannot leave over? That it's okay. He doesn't want, he wants you to read all 5 psukim. He doesn't want you to leave over after 3 psukim anymore, because people that leave may conclude that the next one is going to get only 2 psukim. So why doesn't he worry about, let's not start only 1 pasuk, like he says. Maybe the person will enter, will see that we're reading only 1 pasuk. So why doesn't he care to just read 1 pasuk in the new parsha, the Tanakama, if he's concerned about not leaving over less than 3 psukim at the end for those who leave? Why isn't he concerned for those who are coming in? And Adrabah, the way the Gemara said before, coming in is more common than to leave, at least according to the other Svarim. And the Gemara says, Amri, I'll answer you, I'll tell you, that man the ayil shiyula mishayil. A person who's coming into shul is going to ask if he sees the guy gets one pasuk for his aliyah. He's not going to conclude he only read 1 pasuk or he only read 2 psukim. He's going to ask the person in shul, where did the guy get his aliyah? He'll tell him, well, he got it from the parsha on top. That's where he started reading. He's not going to conclude that he only got 1. Person who's leaving doesn't have anybody to ask. He makes an assumption. The Gemara says, man the ayil, one who goes up, shiyuli shayil will ask. So Rashi shiyuli mashil. Sheyish mashe koyre hasheni. Shor lish mikrois. When he's going to hear that the second one that gets the second aliyah is going to read 2 psukim, 3 psukim. And the first one only read from this parsha only 2 psukim. So Yishal Heich Kora Harishan Shnei Psukim LeYeser. He's going to ask. He sees now that the second one is reading 3 psukim. He says, how come the first one only read 2 psukim? They'll tell him So they'll tell him that he had read from the first parsha. So basically, he says one who comes in. I mean, Rashi adds, Rashi says he will see that the second one gets 3 psukim. So therefore, he will know to ask and say, how come the one before him only got 2 psukim? I wonder how this would play out if there's only 1 pasuk. We constantly talk about 2 psukim, because maybe 1 pasuk they would not make a mistake. The issue is here 2 psukim. Everybody knows 1 pasuk is not enough. I'm not sure, but Rashi gives all the scenarios with 2 psukim. So, therefore, the Tanakama isn't concerned about reading 1 pasuk in the beginning, because he says the person will ask and he'll find out that he got the 2 psukim, as opposed to when the person leaves and there's only 2 psukim left, he'll conclude that the next one will get the 2 psukim, and he'll come to a wrong conclusion, and that's why we want him to leave at least 3 psukim. Okay, so now we are going back to the previous Gemara that I told you before, about the Mamodis. So, over there, just to understand it clearly again, I'm going to go to the previous page. I'm going to show you in the psukim. So when the Yidden did the Maimonides, they did Breishis Bara. They did. No, I'm sorry, it's in this page here, and they did. So these are the psukim. If you look, they did. They did Breishis Bara Likim from Breishis. This is the first paragraph in the Torah. Starts with Breishis. Okay, are you able to see it? Starts with Breishis, and it ends with Pasuk Zion. Okay, this is Zion. So that's 7 psukim. And the next thing what they did was they did the portion I don't see it, but the next portion, I didn't quote it here, but the next portion is 2 psukim. So they did, so you had to give 3 people a total of 5 and 2. You had 7 psukim in total. 5 and 2. Each one has to get 3 psukim. So the Gemara says, how do we do it? How do we give 3 psukim to each one and we only have 7 psukim? The Gemara says, how do we do that? So we had 2 opinions before in the Gemara. One person says, the first one reads 3 psukim, and the next one goes back and reads. So the first one would read Aleph, Beis, and Gimel, and the next one will go back, skip back to Gimel, and he will do. Actually, see that I made a mistake. It actually has both psukim. See Aleph through Hey, that's the first parsha. That's the 5 psukim, and then from the second parsha is from Vavan is 1 second. No, is 3 psukim. I take that back. Sorry. So the first parsha is 5 psukim, and the next parsha is 3 psukim. So the third aliyah is simple. There's 3 psukim. Vav, Zion, and Ches. That's what the second one gets. That's obvious. But what do we do? How do we give 2 people? We only have 7 psukim. Each one has to get 3. We only have 5 psukim. We have 5 psukim. How do we give 5 psukim to 3 people? To 2 people? How do we split the aliyahs of 5 psukim? Each one has to get 3 psukim, and we have 2 people. We only have 5 psukim here. How do we do that? So we had 2 opinions. One opinion said that the first one reads Aleph, Beis, Gimel. The second one goes back and does Gimel, Dalet, Hey. So he basically rereads. The second one rereads the first one. The other one says we split Pasuk Gimel into 2. We give the first one 2.5 psukim, and we give the second one 2.5 psukim. Okay? That's what we do it. So they asked him, what's the ruling? Sholach lei Rabba berei de Rava le Rabbi Yosef hilchas amai. So Rava, the son of Rabbi Yosef, Rabba, the son of Rava, sent to Rabbi Yosef. He asked him hilchas amai. What is the halacha? Hilchas amai, Rashi b'shel mamodes. He wanted to know: do you jump over? Do you go back? Sholach lei. So he says to him, Hilchas adoilig. The law is that you skip over. Basically, the first one reads Aleph, Beis, Gimel, and the second one reads Gimel, Dalet, Hey. That's what he says. You jump over, and who jumps over? It's the middle one that skips over. Why? So why don't you say let the middle one do Daled Hey and do Vav of the next Parsha, that wouldn't work. Because then he's only going to leave over 2 for the third Aliyah. Or no, that's going to leave less than 3 psukim over there. And if he's going to do all the 3 psukim, then the other one is not going to have what to read at all. Again, let's go back, look in this side in the psukim over here. So he says what happens here is the first one reads Aleph, Beis, and Gimel. Up till here. He gets first Aliyah gets Aleph, Beis, and Gimel. The second Aliyah goes back to Pasuk Gimel, and he does Gimel, Dalet, and Hey. 3 psukim. The third Aliyah gets Vav, Zayin, and Ches. Now, Rashi explains, we can't do the second Aliyah, Dalet, Hey, and Vav, because then he's going to be doing only one pasuk in this new parsha. Because now we're in the new parsha already. You're going to leave less than 3 psukim. If you're going to tell him to do it all the way to the end, the second one, the third one doesn't have anything to read. So therefore, the middle one must go back and do Gimel, and Dalet, and Hey, and the third one will do Vav, Zayin, Ches. I hope you get it over here, what he's saying over here. So he says,
why can't the third person just keep going into the following parsha? Say what's wrong with him doing 8 psukim?
Very good point. But these pasukim have specifically to do with the Sunday when they would do the Mamodes. I guess the Sunday and those were part of the parsha. So they couldn't go just further. It's not just like a regular reading. When you're talking about Monday and Thursday, you can read it as far as you want. It doesn't really matter. And Rashi has brought out that point before, already made that point. But over here, it's precisely to be, these are the psukim that need to be read. And the way to do that, you see, the Brisa didn't get involved how to split it up. That's what the Gemara started trying to figure out. How do we split it up? The Gemara basically just said that what you do it is, you do Bereshis B'Shnayim, you do the first parsha B'Shnayim, and you do Kiyah, which is the beginning of the second parsha, you do it B'Echad. And then the Gemara starts to explain how to do it, whether, like I say, you skip over or you split that third pasuk. That's another opinion, but that's what he says, that the middle one skips over, goes back 1 pasuk, and the last one reads his parsha, as it says over there. As right, because if the middle one is not going to skip, then he'll have to start in this parsha less than 3 psukim. And something else, and let's say he'll do 1 pasuk, the second one will have to be medalig also, because that parsha is only 3 psukim. So it turns out it'll be Vav, Zayin, and Ches. You'll have people medalig. 2 medaligim, then also you'll have to go back. And Rashi says if you're going to read 3 from the, if the second one is going to read 3 from the second one, Nimtzo Koira Kula, then he's going to end up reading the whole second parsha. So there's nothing left for the third one. But my point is that you're actually going to have to, if he's going to read 1, besides the fact that you're going to be leaving 2 psukim for the other one, but the other one is not going to be able to read just 2 psukim, so it's going to have to be medalig. So in other words, if the first one is not medalig, I'm sorry, I take that back. No, I made a mistake. If the first is not medalig, we can have just the second one medalig. But the only problem we have is that we can either have the first one medalig or the second one medalig. But we can't have the second one medalig because then he's going to only have 1 pasuk there, and he can't read the whole thing because then there's nothing left for the second. Okay, it's obvious. My mistake. Okay, then the Gemara was saying how many aliyahs you get. So we had the Gemara mentions the various different times when we lane, with Monday and Thursday, right? And Mincha, Shabbos. The Gemara talks about Rosh Chodesh, Chol HaMoed, Yom Tov, Yom Kippur, and Shabbos. There's one thing that's not mentioned. Tainis Tzibur. How many people we get in Aliyah in Tainis Tzibur? So the Gemara brings, it says, Kol sheyesh by Musaf v'chulu. It says if it has Musaf. No, a Tainis Tzibur doesn't have Musaf. So one would argue and say, well, the no Musaf, no 4. The Gemara says, the Mishnah said, when would you read 4 if you have Musaf over there? But since Tainis doesn't have Musaf, one would say Tainis only gets 3. There's no Musaf over there. Because in order to get 4, you need Musaf. That's what the Mishnah said. But the word Musaf itself can be interpreted. We think that what Musaf is, it means the Tfilas Musaf that we do on Shabbos and Yom Tov, right? On Rosh Chodesh, we do Musaf, extra korban. But the Gemara thinks maybe Musaf means additional prayer, because on a fast day, we add for the Chazan, he adds the Tfilas Anenu, he adds the extra Anenu for the fast day. Maybe that's considered to be an extra. So they had a question in the yeshiva. Tainis Tzibur Bekamo. How many people get an aliyah on a fast day? So, what's the question? The Gemara explains. Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed, the Ika Korban Musaf, in which there is a Musaf Korban, Arba, then we read 4. Aval Hochad Leka Korban, but by a Tainis, over here, by Tainis, there is no Korban Musaf. Loi, then we're going to read 3. That would be one idea. Oidilma, or perhaps, Ochanami Ika Musaf Tefillah. There's also a Musaf here. Not a Korban Musaf, but there's additional prayer. Musaf Zaktrashi Piska Tefillah Sanenu. The piece of the prayer of Anenu is Bracha Yisera. That's an additional blessing. So maybe that's the Musaf, and maybe we do 4. So the Gemara tries to derive from the Mishnah. Toshma, come and listen. The Mishnah said, B'Rosh Chadashim, U'B'Choyle Shel Moed Koydim Arba, that on Rosh Chodesh and on Chol HaMoed, you read 4, end quote. That's the quote of the Mishnah. So therefore, what should this tell us? Tainis Tzibur Gimel. So since it only says Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed is 4, we can derive. It doesn't say they're also Tainis Tzibur. That means Tainis Tzibur is 3, not 4. So the Gemara says, well, a Moresha. So why don't you look what it says in the first part of the Mishnah? Over there it says, B'Sheni, B'Chamishu, B'Shabbos, B'Mincha Koydim Gimel. That on Monday and Thursday, and on Shabbos Mincha, you read 3. Or Tainis Tzibur, Arba, but Tainis Tzibur is 4. In other words, Tainis Tzibur is not mentioned by the 4 and not mentioned by the 3. So you can't really prove either way. From here, we can't derive anything because it's not mentioned by the 3 and it's not mentioned by the 4, so we don't know. Gemara is trying to figure out how many aliyahs is there by a Tainis Tzibur. So the Gemara quotes a story, Toshma. The Rav Iklo leBavel v'Tainis Tzibur. Rav came to Bavel. It was a public fast. Come koro b'sifra. So he got up and he read the Torah. Sifra, he read the Torah. He read the Torah. Now the Gemara is going to point out he did several things. We're going to explain what he did. First of all, Pasak Barich, Chasim v'le Barich. When he opened up before he started the Aliyah, he made the bracha before the Aliyah. But when he concluded, he did not make the bracha. He did not make the end bracha after he finished his Aliyah. See soon, we're going to explain why. Now, then it says, Nofel, Kula Alma Anampayu. All the people fell on their faces when the Philasapayim. They fell, they did the Philasapayim. But Rav Loi Nofel Alpay, but Rav himself did not fall on his face. Okay, that's the end of the story. So the Gemara is trying to explain why Rav made a bracha in the beginning and didn't make a bracha in the end. Now, previously we learned in our Mishnah that in the olden days, originally, the first one who got the aliyah made the bracha in the opening, and the one who got the last aliyah, if it's 3 aliyahs, the third aliyah, he would make the end bracha. The one in the middle didn't make any brachas. First one didn't make the end bracha, and the last one didn't make the beginning bracha. So the first one made the first bracha, and the last one made the end bracha. So, in order for Rav to understand why he made a bracha in the beginning and the end, it would make sense if he's a kohen, because the first aliyah goes to the kohen. So, had it been a kohen, then we would understand why he makes the bracha in the beginning, not the end, because the first aliyah makes the bracha in the beginning. But since Rav was not a kohen, so he must have gotten the third aliyah. Kohen got the first one, the second one got the Levi. The Gemara doesn't consider maybe there was no Kohen there, maybe there was no Levi there. That's not in the equation right now. But the Gemara assumes first one got the Kohen, the second one got the Levi. So Rav was the Yisrael. We know that Rav was a Yisrael. Right, the Gemara, Megillah. So let's look at it. Let's examine this. Rav Yisrael Kara. Rav read the Yisrael Aliyah. That's what he read. Megillah Rav Yisrael Kara. How do we know? He was not a kohen, not a Levi, so he must have led the last aliyah. So my time of chosim v'le baruch. So how come he made a end bracha, not the beginning of bracha? If he was a kohen, we would understand. But he wasn't a kohen; he must have got the third aliyah. Aha! The Gemara says, "I have a solution for you to resolve our question." It must have been the third aliyah. It must have been the third aliyah. And there's another aliyah that comes afterwards. So therefore, he didn't make an end bracha. Now, the first thing that comes to question, he's trying to prove that there's 4 aliyahs on the tainis, because how come he didn't make the after bracha? Must be lav. Is it then not mishum the boile mikrachrina basrei? Because there should be somebody else reading after them. There's 4 aliyahs. Otherwise, he should. If he was the last one, he should make the end bracha. Well, you can ask me right away. So what did he make? So let's say that you're right. Let's say there is 4 aliyahs. But why did he make the first bracha? The first bracha should only be made by the kohen. Enochanami. The Gemara is going to prove that he actually read. But right now, the Gemara is just thinking to prove that there's another aliyah, because if he finished the Torah, he must have to made a bracha over there at the end, because nobody else could make the end bracha. Why would he not make the end bracha? Must be there would be another aliyah who could make the end bracha. So that means there's 4 aliyahs on tainis. And the Gemara says, no. Rav was take a Yisrael. But the halacha is that a real great rabbi can read in the place of a kohen. Even though the first aliyah is reserved for a kohen. But Rav bekahani kora. Rav was such an important rabbi that he could read even in the Aliyah of the Kohen.
Maybe they didn't have a Kohen in the room.
Even if you had a Kohen. No Kohen, any Yisrael can read. There's no Kohen, no choice. But because he's so great, a Talmud Chacham, so he can take the place of a Kohen. And the Gemara said that Rav Kore Bekane. Rav would take the Kohen Aliyah, even though it was a Yisrael. The Rav Kore Bekane, B'Mesechet Gitman is Zokin. The Gemara says in the Zokin of the Testament base. So just like Rav Huna read Bekane, Rav also read Bekane. But in order to get the special Rav Bekane, you had to be an outstanding scholar. So the Gemara challenges whether Rav was such an outstanding scholar in all of his community. So the Gemara is going to say Rav Kahana, where Rav Kahana lived in Israel, amongst Israelis scholars, he was the outstanding scholar. So he could get the Aliyah of the Kohen. But the Gemara thinks that where Rav lived, that was also part of Babylonia, of Bavel. In Bavel, there was Shmuel, who was actually greater than him, the Gemara thinks. Shmuel was even greater than Rav. How could Rav read Kohen when there's Shmuel living in Bavel? So you must look at this. It is okay and it's understood why Rav Huna would read the Kohen. Rav Ami, Rav Asi. Because even the rabbis, Rav Ami, Rav Asi, they were actually Kahanim. Chashiva Derer Yisrael. They were the important people, the Kahanim of Eretz Yisrael, great rabbis, the Kahanim. Mekif Kaifele le Rav Huna. They would be subdued, they would bend for Rav Huna. Meaning they recognize Rav Huna as the great rabbi. Even them, the Kohanim. So we understand why he would get the Kohen Aliyah, why Rav Huna would give himself the Kohen Aliyah. Ela Rav, with Rav, Oika Shmuel the Kahana. There is Shmuel who was a Kohen in Bavel. He was in Ben Nahardo. There were two cities in Bavel. Rav was in Surah and Shmuel was in Nahardo. So in Nahardo, Shmuel Medina's Bavel, the Kanahu, he was a Kohen. In order for the rabbi to be allowed to take the Kohen Aliyah, the greatest Kahanim that lived in that country had to be subdued to you. But since in the country where Rav lived in Bavel, there was Shmuel wasn't subdued to Rav Adrabah. But Dabar Eloi. Dabar Eloi means he was above him. He was greater than him. The Dabar Eloi Rashi. No hoyaliyas l'mayla meram. He was accustomed to be beyond Rav. The Gemara says over there, Rav lo ayin l'kamei de Shmuel. Rav would not go in ahead of Shmuel. Meaning Rav would honor Shmuel and he put him ahead of him. So since Shmuel was a Kohen and he was ahead, Rav placed him ahead. How could Rav go get the Kohen Aliyah in Bavel where there was Shmuel over there? I think what says, no, that's not really. Really, Shmuel was bent under Rav. Rav just honored him, not because he was not subdued. Shmuel nami mikev hafekaif Rav. Shmuel was also subdued to Rav. But the Rav would Ovid like covet. Rav was giving him honor, not to go in front of him. He would always he gave him covet. And Rashi explains why did he do that. There was an incident that they had a little to do over there. But Rav would Ovid lahai the adbri alei, the fact that he led him ahead of him, Kovid Ovidle, he gave him honor. There was an incident which was the light to Rav Shmuel, the Lelik Maboni. Rav cursed Shmuel that his children should not last. There was a story there that in the Masechta Shabbos, Perik Shemini Shrotzim, that Kuvches Amad Aleph, that it was Shmuel and Karna was sitting there, and they got into a little bit a discussion over there, and Rav got upset, and he gave a curse from his mouth, and therefore he gave him honor later on, not to let him before. And actually, unfortunately, the curse became true. Actually, the Gemara says there that Itaka didn't have any children, Shmuel. But the Gemara says, so in front of him, he gave him this honor. So therefore, he honored him into his face, but and not in front of him, he didn't do. So he would get the aliyah of the Kohen okay, because they didn't live in the same city. Shmuel was not in Bavel, but he was actually Nardo. Ochinami Mistabra, and the Gemara concludes that it also makes sense the Rab Bekahani Korah, that it was reading the Kohen. These Halkadaitach Yisrael Korah, because if Itaka read the Yisrael, the Fonel Matayim Baruch, how come he didn't make a bracha in front? He just, okay, if you said there's another aliyah. So the Gemara said, you know why he didn't make the bracha? Why did he make it? Because Lachat HaKoneh was after it was instituted, and everybody makes their own aliyah. So the Gemara says, if it's Iyochi, Lachareha, Namid Livrich, so let him make the bracha afterwards. Unfortunately, I'm out of time. I got to run to Ma'ariv. Wanted to give over a word about the Parsha, about Avraham Avinu's work, that he was out there trying to get people to bless Hashem, even if they didn't mean it so much, but yet, just to get him to bless, to overcome, that was important to him. But unfortunately, I'm out of time, and I got to run downstairs for Ma'ariv. See everybody next week in Mitzvah Hashem.